on synthetic drugs. This is the East Group session. My name is Brian Morales. I'm from the U.S. Department of State. Beginning this month of November through February, we will be looking at specific initiatives available to us through the international organization partners. We will also explore new activities or policies that we can initiate. In January and February, we will have the full menu of activities available for review, and we'll invite you, coalition participants, to express your interest to the international organizations managing the respective initiatives. I have a few other administrative announcements. Please update your screen name so it lists your name, organization, and country. And thank you also for your feedback regarding the number of calendar invites. We recognize we have been sending many calendar invites to participants over the past month. For future meetings, we are going to send only one calendar invite for the entire block of 4-hour meetings for sub-working groups 1.1 through 2.2, and for the 3-hour block of meetings from 3.1 to 3.3. We'll still send invites for both East and West meeting times, so you can choose which is most comfortable for you. We're also seeking to increase coalition participation to include stakeholders from all target audiences of synthetic drug issues. That may include, for example, chemists, policymakers, justice system representatives. Please continue to share coalition registration links with your colleagues so we can make sure that all stakeholders have a seat at the table. I also want to inform that the coalition website is launching officially today, and you can find that at the website www.globalcoalition.us. I'm going to ask Sarah from INL to please paste the website address as well as the agenda in the chat so you can all access the website link. Now, I would also like to conclude by sharing, before I turn it over to today's co-chairs, we have 2 co-chairs that will begin with their remarks. Ms. Monica Ashish Batra, the Deputy Director General from the Narcotics Control Board, and Mr. Dulat Mukametrakimov from the Deputy Head of the Division on Countering Illicit Trafficking of Narcotics from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. She is from India, he is from Kazakhstan, and following their introductions, they will turn it over to 3 presentations that we have today. One on tools and resources to assist member states in understanding the manufacture of synthetic drugs, UNODC's presentation on the laboratory scientific services training programs, and then a presentation from Colombo Plant on toxic adulterants. So I will now turn it over to today's moderators and over to Monica and Dulat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. Am I audible? Yeah.
Please
yes,
go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. So, respected Shri, Mr. Dulat Mukametrakimov, Deputy Head of the Division on Counter Illicit Trafficking of Narcotics, Ministry of Internal Affairs of Kazakhstan. Brian Morales, Branch Chief Counter Narcotics Office of Global Program, U.S. Department of State, and distinguished participants from member states. A very good morning to all of you. I am Monica Ashish Batra. I'm the Deputy Director General in Narcotics Control Bureau of India, and I am in charge of the international coordination. At the outset, I would welcome all the delegates from the member states, and I convey my sincere thanks for giving me this opportunity to chair the sub-working group meeting. It is a privilege for me to co-chair the meeting of sub-working group 1.1 of the Global Coalition on Synthetic Drugs. We are all witnessing a rapid evolution of chemical industry with the advent of new technologies and innovations. This has paved the way for precursors and precursor chemicals for manufacturing of various drugs, particularly synthetic drugs. The nature and type of the precursors are also changing. Adverse public health and security challenges posed by the synthetic drugs are evident to all of us. Thus, we should be committed to work towards containing the manufacturing of synthetic drugs and precursor chemicals without hampering the availability for medical and scientific purposes. We have come to this common platform to counter the illicit manufacturing diversion and trafficking of synthetic drugs and their precursors. The precursor chemicals have become the backbone of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances, just as the drugs and psychotropic substances get trafficked across the globe, hopping through countries and continents. Precursor chemicals are trafficked from source country to destination. Controlling the diversion and trafficking in precursor chemicals are in fact a way to control the trafficking in narcotic drugs. This control over diversion of precursor chemicals can be achieved only through robust international cooperation mechanisms. It is with this view to strengthen our cooperation in controlling all precursor chemicals involved in manufacture of these drugs and psychotropic substances that we have agreed to come to this common platform. The execution happens through exchange of information and best practices, joint actions, etc. Therefore, it is very important for all of us to share information on trafficking of precursor chemicals in our region and countermeasures involved in our countries. Summing up, I am confident that this meeting of the sub-working group on manufacturing of synthetic drugs and their precursors will yield tangible and progressive takeaways that will better equip each of the member states to effectively tackle the diversion and trafficking in precursor chemicals. I look forward to the exchange of experiences and ideas by all members in today's making, and let us come up with ideas that make this world drug-free. Thank you so much.
If we can turn it over to Mr. Dulat for his welcoming remarks.
Good morning, good evening. I know everybody is everywhere. I just got connected. First of all, I would like to express gratitude to all participants who are here today. Thank you that Kazakhstan is accepted in this coalition. Let me introduce myself. I am a Colonel Police of Republic of Kazakhstan, Mohammed Mukhtar. I am Deputy Chief of the Division of Counter Trafficking of Drugs. Kazakhstan is a country which is facing a lot of problems with synthetic drugs. And currently, they basically they took the place of all traditional drugs. So in the past, maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of drugs coming from neighboring countries. Currently, those drugs got produced in Kazakhstan. It's a lot of labs were established, and we're fighting against those labs. And from the early this year, we closed about 40 of such labs and confiscated tons and tons of precursors, which are used for production of drugs. We also learning from experience of other countries. There was we're very grateful for special trainings which were conducted in Kazakhstan by International Academy from Budapest, Hungary. And special agents showed us last trends in of working with amphetamines, fentanyls, and other drugs. So we're trying to be to do all we can in this fight. Also, as a co-chair, I would like to give a word to next presentation on the topic of tools and resources which will help countries to fight production of synthetic drugs. And Honor Crean will be the next speaker from the United Nations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Conor Crean. I'll introduce myself. I'm a Scientific Affairs Officer within the Laboratory and Scientific Services of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. I thought I would talk a little bit this afternoon about some of the tools and services we have related to the safe handling, investigation and identification of synthetic drugs for primarily frontline officers. So this is connecting non-forensically trained personnel with the tools and resources available for them for the preliminary identification of drugs, and also connecting them with forensic laboratories in their countries. So I'll start off with the first tool which we have for frontline officers, which is the UNODC drug and precursor testing kits. So these are simple color-based tests that can be used by law enforcement officers to preliminarily identify potentially groups of substances or substances themselves. Results generally do need confirmation from laboratories for use in law enforcement purposes. We produce these within a laboratory in Vienna. We make about 1,000 of them each year, and we send them out to frontline officers all around the world. We run it on a cost recovery basis, so we charge $180 for these kits, which is just used for their production, and we provide the recipients with a list of all of the chemicals so that they can replenish these with their own national sources. So this makes it a more cost-effective tool for frontline officers to use. Each test can be used for about 200 tests, or each test kit carries enough for 200 tests. So associated with this drug and precursor testing kits, we have computer-based training, and we also have training courses that we provide, as you can see in these images, in the field and also in the laboratory in Vienna. When it comes to the more advanced presumptive identification, we have a range of different handheld devices that use different types of technology that we actually do tenders with certain companies. We determine what type of substances we would expect our clients to be hopeful to be able to preliminarily detect, and we receive instruments from manufacturers, and we test them with the United Nations reference standards collection that we have to be sure that the devices can identify the substances that we want. And what we do is we work with global programs within UNODC, and we also with national projects throughout the world to work with customs officers, border personnel, people who work in airports, people who work in maritime crimes at the sea. And we bring those personnel to the laboratory in Vienna, or we actually go and do this in the field, and we teach them how to use the drug and precursor testing kits and the handheld devices. So the idea is that we strengthen their capacity, but also give them awareness of how powerful these tools are, but also what they cannot be used for. So the strengths of the devices, but also some limitations. And most of the times we try and connect somebody from one of the local forensic laboratories that we work with as part of the network of laboratories that UNODC works with, and we connect these law enforcement officers to the forensic personnel. It wouldn't be a training course if it didn't come with an associated guideline. So we have a UNODC guideline on the use of these equipment. So this is available in multiple languages. And we do find that this is a very useful training for frontline officers. Connected to that, we have a suite of different tools, services, and manuals and training courses in the area of safe handling and disposal of chemicals. So we have a manual on safe handling and disposal of chemicals used in illicit manufacture of drugs, an illustrated guide for the disposal of these chemicals used in illicit manufacture, also in remote locations. So this has a lot of resources on how people would need to set up the tools and locations to dispose of chemicals if they're in remote environments. And more recently, we have a guideline for the safe handling of synthetic opioids for law enforcement and customs officers. And we did this in the last few years as a result of the opioid crisis that we've seen in a number of countries, and also the need for officers to be able to carry out their work in a safe manner. We will add to this suite of products, currently providing a manual on the dismantling of clandestine laboratories. So this is also going to form part of this suite of manuals and guidelines and associated training courses. Just going into the safe handling guideline a little bit, it is a very visual tool that shows frontline officers how to appropriately use and remove decontaminate and dispose of essential elements of personal protective equipment that they need to be aware of when they're investigating cases of synthetic drug manufacture. We do have training courses in the safe handling that we carry out in the laboratory here in Vienna, but also in the field. And as you can see, on location, because we've just come back from doing some training in Latin America. And the idea here is that we go to the location where the officers work, and we do scenario-based training using the personal protective equipment kits to do inspections of containers, to do inspection of automobiles under the conditions under which these frontline officers work. We simulate the inspection of cases in which synthetic drugs might be identified in their environment. So in addition to this, we have personal protective equipment kits that we provide to the trainees. And we find that this is a resource that is continuing to grow in the last number of years. And I see that as one of the goals of this working group is to share these resources that we have available to you as participants, and to increase awareness about them, and to increase then potentially access to being able to make full use of these training courses, guidelines, tools, and also hear from you about the needs that you have. And if there are elements of these that we need to continually evolve and change, we will do so. This is the main part of the work that we do. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Did you want some commentary, Browne, off the back of that presentation?
Hi, Greg. Wonderful. If you'd like to, please go ahead.
Well, look, I just want to thank UNODC on that. I think that's superb. And I was just thinking of our colleagues in the Pacific Islands. I would have thought that some of the products that you can provide in the training sounds just spot on for the challenges that they have right across the Pacific Islands. I was talking to Mason only yesterday about this challenge. So certainly I think they'd be keen to do that. I've already jumped on your UNODC site and found your disposal of chemicals manual to download. So for the participants, it's if you use UNODC and search across, you'll find a lot of the manuals are sitting there. So just fantastic. I think it's brilliant. I'm sure that a lot of the participants will be keen to engage with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll turn back to our co-chairs if they would like to introduce the next presenter. Otherwise, I'm happy to share it as you wish.
Yes, thank you so much for the information provided. I'd like to thank our first speaker. If you would like to introduce our second speaker, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Greg Williams, who's the co-chair of our first working group, of the #1 working group. Thank you for being here this morning. So the next presentation is UNODC's LSS Training Programs on the analysis and identification of drugs and precursor chemicals in profiling. And we have a presentation from Ling Wong, Scientific Affairs Officer from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Thank you for inviting me to speak in this very important meeting. My name is Ling Wong, and I'm working together with Conor in the Laboratory and Scientific Services. Now, today I would like to give you a brief introduction into the tools and services UNODC provides to build forensic laboratory capacity in member states to analyze and identify drugs and precursors and profiling.
Now, to continue, I would like to mention that through the UNODC International Quality Assurance Program, the Laboratory and Scientific Services aims to improve national forensic capacity and capabilities of member states to meet internationally accepted standards and ensure that they are available and accessible worldwide. Now, to this end, we provide manuals and guidelines on quality assurance and recommended methods of analysis of drugs. We also implement the a proficiency testing scheme called the International Collaborative Exercises, or ICE in short, to enhance capacity to identify drugs and new psychoactive substances using recommended guidelines. In addition, we also provide reference material of drugs as well as tailored training and mentoring support to our partner laboratories. As many of you already know, UNODC publishes a series of manuals and guidelines since 1984 to enhance the operational capacity of drug testing laboratories, to improve the quality of their performance, and to promote standardization of working practices on many topics traditionally on drug identification, but has recently expanded to include chemical disposal, crime scene investigation, quality assurance, and security document examination. Here are some examples of manuals covering topics on quality management. And a vast majority of the series covers recommended methods on the analysis of drugs in seized materials and biological specimens. We have also dedicated manuals on the analysis of new psychoactive substances and profiling of drugs, heroin and cocaine in particular, which is currently being revised and will be published very soon. Next, allow me to give a brief introduction to the UNODC International Collaborative Exercises Program, or known as ICE in short, which is an important part of the UNODC International Quality Assurance Program. And this program aims to assist forensic laboratories, both from developing and developed countries, to continuously monitor their performance on a global scale. This diagram gives us a good overview of the ICE program. Participating laboratories are provided with test samples, which mimic the actual casework samples, and laboratories are required to analyze them. Upon submission of results, immediate and confidential evaluation is provided. I would like to stress that we treat the results confidentially to establish trust with laboratories so that they can improve their performance without fear of being penalized. We also provide feedback and mentoring to laboratories who need more assistance. The main benefits of the ICE program are obtained through continuous participation. Laboratories can continuously self-assess their performance, identify weaknesses, and improve their processes. The program is still currently free of charge, not just for the test samples, but also for the provision of reference material, which occurs once every 2 years. Since the program started in 1995, we have more than 460 laboratories participating from 110 countries. As mentioned before, we provide reference material once every 2 years. This year is the year we normally conduct this huge exercise, and so far we have sent over 5,000 units. The ICE program covers the main group of drugs and selected new psychoactive substances in seized material and biological specimens group as set by a panel of forensic experts. Reference materials would be provided according to this menu of substances. There are altogether 2 rounds per year with 4 test samples each. The laboratories have the flexibility to use a range of analytical techniques available to obtain the results. Qualitative analysis is compulsory, however, quantitative analysis is voluntary but highly recommended. After submission of results through an online platform, laboratories will receive a confidential evaluation report immediately. And at the end of the round, a summary report on the overall performance of laboratory will be provided. Through these exercises, laboratory can continuously evaluate their performance and assess the quality of their results on a global level. With regards to training, UNODC provides training to law enforcement officers and forensic personnel on a variety of topics such as drug identification and testing, crime scene awareness and investigation, and security document examinations. These training sessions are conducted here in the UNODC laboratory in Vienna, Austria, as well as on-site in the field. We also provide short courses virtually, a skill we mastered through the pandemic days. If you have any queries, please feel free to write to us at UNODC-ICE for anything related to the ICE program, and for all other queries, kindly write to UNODC-Lab. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Огромное спасибо.
Thank you very much, Ling Wong, for the information, for the very detailed information. Some of the things that I have heard from you now, I think will be very useful. And if we can, maybe through our coordinators, we'll ask to have your presentation, and maybe we'll be able to provide it to our personnel as well. Thank you. And I would like to introduce the next speaker, who is Thom Browne, Chief Executive Officer, Colombo Plan Secretariat. And he's going to talk about Colombo Plan Toxic Adulterant Program. Please.
Back in 2010, Colombo Plan started a program testing street drugs worldwide because the composition of street drugs we found out had been changing. When I worked at DEA in 1982, I worked on the first fentanyl or synthetic drug epidemic in the US. Back then, whether it was fentanyl, synthetics, or legacy drugs like heroin or cocaine, they were cut 1 or 2 times. If we fast forward to today, we're finding in the US and around the world, it's a more complicated situation where many drugs can be cut up to 20, 21 times. And this makes it difficult to separate these mixtures. When you're analyzing the drugs, it's important to identify every compound in an individual drug sample so you'd have an idea of what's causing overdose or what's causing chronic health problems. And today, based on the analysis that we do this worldwide. We found out in the US about 32% of the street samples we analyze are cut anywhere from 15 to 21 times. And it's a very complex mixture of multiple fentanyl and fentanyl derivatives, legacy drugs, heroin, cocaine. You also have synthetic cathinones, cannabinoids, and synthetic hallucinogenics in the actual same drug sample. So it's very important to be able to, when you conduct an analysis of these drugs, to conduct analysis of everything that is in that sample called a mixture, so you know what's causing overdose and what's causing health problems on that. And we first started going overseas. We were called down to Brazil and Argentina, where we had people were getting sick from cocaine, but it just wasn't the cocaine. If you conducted a full-scale analysis of everything in that drug sample, it found out there were a bunch of cutting agents, banned pharmaceutical drugs or veterinary drugs that were causing a series of health problems. For instance, street kids in Sao Paulo were 8, 9, 10, 12 years old were experiencing kidney damage, which is very rare and unusual for a kid 12 years old. When analyzing the crack cocaine they were smoking, found out the adulterant, or the banned analgesic drug phenacetin, was in there. Phenacetin was banned because it causes kidney damage, it depletes red blood cells. And when it was in aspirin in humans in the 1960s, it caused kidney damage over time. But when you had a street kid or someone smoking crack 30 times a day, 7 days a week for months on a time, within a matter of months, they're going to develop kidney damage. So by doing that full-scale analysis, analyzing everything in the drug sample, we're able to tell what was causing kidney damage among street kids in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Likewise, a lot of drug users were getting all sorts of bizarre infections and diseases. The reason was their drugs were also cut with unique adulterants at the time: levamisole, a veterinary dewormer, metamizole, a banned analgesic, and aspirin, the same with aminopyrin, a banned analgesic, banned because they deplete white blood cells. This explained the bizarre infections and diseases that were actually seen. In Ecuador, there was overdose from opioids, but it wasn't fentanyl. They had a brand of heroin called H, and when we went down here to analyze it, the thing that was causing the problems, with the compound causing the problems, was the high blood medication diltiazem. Diltiazem, when combined with heroin or opioids, has a synergistic effect, almost a double depressant effect, that was causing overdose not only in Guayaquil, Ecuador, but in the Northeast United States where it was shipped. And in addition, by analyzing everything in the drug sample, we found out that cocaine was in there too, causing a speedball effect. So it was very necessary to analyze all compounds in the drug sample to understand what causes health problems or what causes overdose and lethality. Also, by doing the full-scale analysis of what's in the street drug sample, we got called to Chicago, Illinois, because in the state of Illinois, the drug users during COVID in Chicago had an unusual high rate of COVID among substance users in Chicago, but not the rest of the state. So by analyzing the drug samples...
Sir, interpreter is asking you to slow down, please.
Okay. by analyzing hundreds of samples, street samples of drugs in the state, we found out that Chicago was unique. There were a number of cutting agents highlighted in yellow that are known to deplete white blood cells. And this did not appear in the rest of the state. And this explained why substance users were suspect to high rates of COVID during the COVID epidemic, because their immune systems were being compromised with white blood cell depletion. In the same way, a lot of our first responders were experiencing problems with administering naloxone. Instead of taking 1 or 2 doses, there were instances where emergency technicians had to administer 5, 6, or 8 doses of naloxone, and it was not an understanding why. But by analyzing all compounds in a street drug sample, we found out that half of the, say, constituents in the drug sample, the sample was cut 20 times, 7 or 8 of them, those compounds were known to actually affect naloxone administration, requiring more naloxone. So the reason we're able to answer the questions of don't panic because naloxone works, but it's going to take longer because the street drug sample may contain 10 compounds, 5 or 6 of those are known to affect naloxone administration, so it's going to take time. So by doing the full-scale analysis, we're able to determine what was affecting naloxone administration. The same thing applies, not just seized street drugs. We also analyze overdose fluid samples. And we've seen the same thing with the street drugs, where it can be up to 15, 20 compounds in the street drugs. When you analyze the overdose serum of a person who overdosed on drugs, you find the same thing. Multiple legacy drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, amphetamines, fentanyls, multiple fentanyl compounds, isotoniazine, synthetic opioid. And so we find the same pattern happening. And so part of the program we have, which we call the Sentinel program, it's one thing to analyze what's on the streets in the United States or any other country. So you see drugs are cut 20 times. That's not how it comes in the country. So it's important to look at the borders, how the drug is coming into a country. And we did this with the United States as it come from Mexico into the US. We found out there's maybe 3, 4, 5 compounds, say, in a fentanyl pill sample. The importance of doing the full-scale analysis and identifying everything, it's accepted that fentanyl is lethal at 2 milligrams. However, these samples are not 2 milligrams, they're 1 milligram or less. But why would this be lethal? Why would it cause overdose? It's because the compounds highlighted in yellow are known to potentiate opioids like heroin and fentanyl, making them more potent. So a 1 milligram fentanyl sample, say, that's cut with metamizole, levamisole, xylazine, and limited amounts of parafourfentanyl is more lethal than a 2 milligram dose. So this redefines what is lethality, what's a lethal dose. So that's why it's very important to analyze every compound in the actual drug sample to find out, even though this fentanyl pill is under 1 milligram, it is still highly lethal, because these adulterants or cutting agents in there basically will actually potentiate that and make fentanyl more lethal. So what we've done with a lot of countries will have GCMS machines to add equipment to analyze drugs. However, if you have a complex mixture of 15, 10, 21 compounds in a drug sample, GCMS is not likely to separate all those. So it's important to use a technique an analysis technique in machine that can identify and separate all compounds in a drug mixture, and also do the quantification on that so you can determine potency, lethality enough. So what we do, we train on LCMS machines and LCMS technology, because these machines will detect everything in a complex mixture in a drug sample. So, and also will quantify, so you'll have a better idea of what's causing overdose and severe health problems. When we conduct the training in the United States, we conducted at a lab with NMS Labs in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. One unique aspect that they have hundreds of street samples from the United States, have complex mixtures that have caused overdose. We divide them into samples that cause fatal overdose like these, or samples that cause non-fatal overdose. We have them in wholesale, retail quantities. We have them in kilo bricks, liquids. We have them in powders, in pills. So basically anything that, say, caused an overdose worldwide, we have all those different mixtures of drugs, that actual samples that can be tested on, and not only seized drug samples, but the overdose fluids. We have hundreds of overdose fluids that cause overdose. So we can train people on both, identifying everything in an overdose fluid and everything in a seized drug sample to better identify what caused overdose death and what's causing severe health problems. And in that we had, we had trained in the United States. We brought Jordan to basically develop techniques to find out everything that's in a Captagon sample. We've trained Brazil, South Korea, United Kingdom, Philippines, in the U.S. We've gone overseas and, trained in Guatemala, Honduras, Argentina, Brazil, Sri Lanka, South Africa, on how to detect everything in a seized drug sample or overdose fluid, so you can have a better idea of what's driving overdose and causing health problems in the country. And what we also do is to help get the word out. We also help the countries develop public health alerts based on what's found. For the adulterants, the unique adulterants like phenacetin that causes kidney failure, or levamisole that depletes white blood cells, when we do the public health alerts, we have a panel of medical doctors that develops what we call a medical flow diagram that lets treatment and public health professionals know how to diagnose exposure to an adulterant like phenacetin and how to treat it. And also with the seized drug samples, what we'll do, if it's something new, like a new synthetic opioid, like a nitazene, isotonidazine, in the alert, we will put in there ways that you can detect it in both seized drug samples and overdose fluid. But the key that we found out is because the pattern of drugs has changed worldwide, especially the actual cutting of drugs, where we can see up to 15 to 20 compounds in a sample. It's necessary to use an LC-MS analysis to test for all of this. Thank you.